You're listening to Still Standing with Brett Francis. Real stories, honest conversations, practical hope. Wherever you are in your journey, welcome.
Welcome to Still Standing. I'm Brett Francis, and this podcast is for anyone who is tired, overwhelmed, in pain, hard on themselves, and still trying. This show is about rebuilding your life when your body, your energy, your confidence, and your capacity have changed, but the demands of life have not. It's about disability, chronic pain, trauma recovery, chronic exhaustion, parenting, education, work, relationships, self-criticism, complicated processes, medical recovery, and more. And trying to keep it on when life does not slow down just because you are struggling. I wanted to start this podcast because I know what it feels like to be in the middle of rebuilding. Not at the end, not in the polished chapter where everything has been solved. Not in the inspirational version where someone looks back and says, it all happened for a reason. I mean, the middle, the messy middle, the part where you are still healing, still hurting, still parenting, still learning, still trying to work out what your future looks like, and still dealing with all the appointments, emails, forms, decisions, emotions, pain, responsibilities, and pressure that come with real life. Adulting, am I right? The part where you are trying to become stronger, but you are also exhausted. The part where you are trying to be hopeful, but you are also grieving. The part where you want to move forward, but your body, your nervous system, your circumstances, and your capacity keep reminding you that you cannot just force your way through everything anymore. And that is a really hard place to live, speaking from personal experience, because from the outside, people may see someone who is functioning. They may see someone who can still speak clearly, someone who can still write emails, someone who can still make plans, someone who can still parent, someone who can still study, someone who can still advocate, and someone who can still show up. But they do not always see what it costs. They do not see the pain after the appointment. They don't see the crash after the pushing through. They don't see the mental load of keeping track of everything. They do not see the self-criticism after a day where you did less than you hoped. They do not see the grief of realizing your body, your energy, or your nervous system is not the same as it used to be. They do not see the fear that maybe you will never fully get back to who you were before. And they don't always understand that being limited does not just mean being lazy. It does not mean being unmotivated. It does not mean being dramatic. It does not mean being weak. Sometimes it means you are carrying more than most and anybody can see. And sometimes the hardest part is not just the pain or the exhaustion itself. Sometimes the hardest part is having to explain it again and again and again to systems, to professionals, to employers, to schools and programs, to the people in your life, and sometimes even to yourself. Because when you are used to pushing through, slowing down can feel like an absolute failure. When you are used to surviving, resting can feel unsafe and also like failure. When you are used to being capable, needing help can feel humiliating. And when you are used to criticizing yourself, even your own pain can become something that you question. You start asking yourself, am I doing enough? Am I trying hard enough? Should I be further ahead by now? Why am I still so tired? Why can't I just handle this? Why does everything feel so heavy? Why does one email feel like a mountain? Why does one form feel like so much? Why can't I be who I used to be? And those questions can become exhausting on their own because self-criticism can sound productive. It can sound like discipline. It can sound like accountability, But sometimes it's just another weight that we have to carry, another demand, another voice telling you that you're not doing enough, even when you're already doing everything that you can with the capacity that you have. That is something I want to talk about on this podcast. Not in a fake positive way, not in a just love yourself way, but in a real way. Because when you are living with pain, exhaustion, trauma, parenting responsibilities, financial pressure, education, goals, work changes, relationship stress, and complicated processes, and more, it is very easy to turn on yourself. It is easy to believe that if you were stronger, more organized, more disciplined, more healed, more positive, or more resilient, everything would be easier. But sometimes life is actually that hard. Sometimes your body is actually hurting. And sometimes your nervous system is actually overloaded. Sometimes the process is actually confusing. Sometimes the demands are actually too much. Sometimes you are not failing. Sometimes you are just exhausted. And I think that a lot of people need to hear that because so many of us are walking around carrying things no one can see. Pain, no one can measure from outside. Grief, no one knows how to name. Stress that has built up over years. Responsibilities that don't get put on pause just because you want them to. Dreams that still matter. And a version of ourselves that we are trying to rebuild, even if we are not totally sure what that version looks like yet. And quite frankly, I'm not sure what that version looks like yet. This is what Still Standing is all about. It's about the reality of trying to build a future while still recovering from the past and managing the present. It's about wanting more from your life, but also needing to accept that your capacity has changed. It's about being ambitious, but not being able to live like your body has unlimited energy anymore. It is about parenting when you're depleted. It is about studying when your brain is tired. It is about working or wanting to work when your body does not cooperate the way that it used to. That's frustrating. It's about relationships, betrayal, grief, anger, distance, self-respect, and learning not to lose yourself while you are trying to survive something. It is about complicated systems and processes that ask people for clarity, documentation, patience, and persistence at the exact time they may have the least energy to give. It's about the quiet, stubborn, sometimes messy act of continuing. Not perfectly, not gracefully all the time, never without breaking down, not without getting angry, not without needing help, but continuing. Because sometimes still standing does not look powerful from the outside. Sometimes it looks like answering one email, making one phone call, getting through one appointment, taking one course at a time, making supper, getting your child to bed, resting because you have no choice, crying and then trying again tomorrow, choosing to not give up on yourself even when you are frustrated with yourself, choosing to believe that your life can still become something meaningful even if it looks different than what you thought it would. And that's where I'm at. This is Still Standing, and that is the version of resilience I want to talk about here. Not the shiny version, not the version where people clap because you made hardship look beautiful. The real version. The version where you are tired and still trying. The version where you are in pain and still have purpose. The version where you are hard on yourself but learning to speak differently. The version where you are grieving and rebuilding at the same time. The version where you do not have everything figured out, but you are still here. This podcast will have personal episodes. It will have practical episodes. Some episodes will be about chronic pain and exhaustion. Some will be about parenting and guilt. Some will be about trauma recovery and the nervous system. Some will be about self-criticism and shame. Some will be about work, education, ambition, and rebuilding our identities. Some will be about complicated processes, paperwork, documentation, and trying to advocate for yourself without completely burning out. And some will simply be about what it feels like to be human when life has asked too much from you for too long. I am not here as someone who has everything figured out. I am not here pretending I have mastered healing, balance, parenting, pain, work, education, relationships, or self-compassion. I am here as someone who is figuring it out in real time. And maybe that is the point, because not every story has to start after everything is fixed. Sometimes the most useful stories are the ones told from the middle, from the place where you are still tired, still hurting, still questioning yourself, still learning your limits, still trying to rebuild, still trying to believe that a different life is possible, still trying to keep on keeping on. And if that's where you are too, I want this podcast to feel like a place where you can exhale a little and just take that breath of, oh, I feel like that too, because I know a lot of people are here. A place where you don't have to explain why you are tired. A place where your pain does not have to be visible to be real. A place where your exhaustion does not mean that you are failing. A place where your ambition and your limitations can both exist. A place where you can be frustrated, hopeful, angry, grieving, proud, overwhelmed, and still moving forward in small ways. Because life can be heavy, and healing can be slow, and rebuilding can be messy. But you are not the only one trying to stand in the middle of it. So welcome to Still Standing. I'm Brett Francis, and this is for anyone tired, overwhelmed, in pain, hard on themselves, and still trying. Still healing, still hurting, still learning, still standing. And thank you for joining me for the premiere episode of Still Standing.
Thank you for listening to Still Standing. Don't forget to check out Brett's website at brettspeaks.com. If this episode helped you feel less alone, please follow the show, share it with someone who may need it, or leave a review. Remember, healing does not have to be perfect to be real, and rebuilding does not have to be pretty to count.